right, this is a continuation of the analysis from yesterday of the echess game from the recent tournament. I was just checking my current games. Let's go back to the game from yesterday where I left off. I think it's this one. Yes, all right, so I'll continue with the self-analysis. And then after I finish with that, I can turn on the engine moves and see what it recommended. So let's just go into self-analysis and we'll turn off the engine. Turn this off. Okay. So yesterday I got through, I want to say, I think I got to about here. So at this point, Black is up by 1 in the material count. It does feel like there's a slight edge. There's a lot of tactical ideas doubling up at some point on the C file. Is one idea, and further maybe activating the bishop, maybe trying to come here at some point. It feels like there's a slight edge, but it's not totally out of hand yet. I didn't get the sense that this was out of hand yet for my opponent, but the game doesn't go on for much longer. It's only another 10 moves or so. So I think we got to this point. Queen d2 threatening this check. King g7 just stops it by covering h6. Then we had be2. And here I came up with what I thought was a pretty clever move. I went queen e7 to get on the open file. So both my heavy pieces are on the 2 open files here. And the point is that if he trades, then this feels like a pretty good endgame for me. This is always going to be pretty nice here. There's not really anything much that he can do to threaten here. Let's see if he comes in this way or something. Let's see what we want to do here. Probably give a check first, probably go here. And then just try to even try to come in this way. Although then I guess, yeah, because knight e4 can always be parried by this check too. But in some way, shape, or form, try to get a rook here, then rook here, harass the bishop, and then start to win these pawns. There's also the idea of maybe trying to bring the bishop around back to hit this way, and then just walk the king up towards the center. So I thought this was a pretty good move here to offer the trade. Similarly, if he takes here, I guess this line is a little more critical. This is a similar kind of idea where it's just not working for white because here he's going to lose the knight. And he's just down a piece, so that also doesn't work. So seemingly he had nothing better but just to avoid it, which is what he did. He doesn't want to have to go into the endgame quite yet. But there's also a lack of threats here for him, and it immediately pretty much gets out of hand. In fact, I'll have to look at what the critical mistake is after this. I'm not exactly sure where he lost the thread. Just in terms of the moves I was looking at yesterday, it still feels like white's fine here, at least up until this point. Rook c2, d4. Maybe after d4, with these variations I was looking at yesterday with the pawn takes here, could be that was more critical. Maybe he should not have allowed this. It didn't look like it was such a big concession to have to give up the exchange here, but maybe in hindsight, if Black plays it accurately, there's just no way to really get enough counterplay. So yeah, because after this point, I pretty much take over. Maybe here he had to try to get knight e4 in or something, but maybe knight d2 here, and then if I threaten to come here, maybe this is where he gets out of the way, something like this. Let's say rook there, queen here. Something like this maybe was better. I might not even want to go for this check because it essentially forces his queen to where it wants to go. So in this position, I might actually do something else. I might, we know knight e4 is coming, so yeah, this is interesting to look at afterward. Maybe there's nothing better than this, huh? Goes there. And just let knight e4 happen, maybe. Yeah, maybe something like this. And then we just, we could certainly just move out of the way. We'd have to give up a pawn. Yeah, maybe, I guess. I want to get through b4 at the right moment. Yeah, maybe, I don't know, maybe now's the time to go b4, but he still has ideas here, so I'm not sure. Yeah, maybe this is what he missed. Maybe after queen d2, things start to get out of hand here. It might not be the most accurate because essentially it is a one-move threat, and it's easily parried by the move king g8. It does make sense, but you want this square for the knight, so possibly that was one of the key mistakes, was this move 38 right here. Because as we'll see, it pretty much gets out of hand here. I agree with the decision to go queen a5, but because I mean his only alternative was to go back to a square that he had already been to. That just leads to a worse endgame, but this ends up finishing pretty quickly because there's a nice idea here. So rook c1, if he doesn't want to give up the knight, he has to move, so he goes here. And then I thought, yeah, and then here's where, this is probably the best move that I found all game, was bishop to f4 here. Seemingly hangs the piece, but the idea is that this would lead to mate, so he can't go there. And there's just really nothing else. There's nothing else he can really try to do. For instance, what else was I looking at here? There were some lines where he could try to go bishop to f1, but seemingly it's not working here. It was a possibility for him in some of these positions, though. Yeah, rook c1, I think this looks correct. Go here. bf4. F6 I thought was really kind of the only try. This makes sense because now at least he'll get in a check. That's the move I expected him to go for. Queen takes so that we can maintain this threat. And if he doesn't do anything, so if he takes it, this was mate. If he doesn't do anything, this is still going to be mate due to the pin. So that's why this is such a nice move here. bf4. Queen a7. It was really the only try, and then it's about figuring out which piece to block with. So I ended up blocking with the bishop. This is actually where he could have tried bf1, with the idea being that I can't take this, or he'll take that way. I still think it didn't work, but it at least was another try. And then if queen here, so this cross pin still holds, go back, and then we get something like this. I looked at this a little bit. I actually wanted to, a better move here would have been to actually just take on f2. This is my plan here, and then I was just going to take here and then try to mate that way, actually. I think that was the idea, and I didn't see a way for him to get out of this. If he lets me take on f2 here, I think everything is falling. So that was another line. So if he goes bf1, I'm going to take on f2. And that's why this is the better pick. If rook here, what was the problem? I don't think it really was a problem, but it allowed, I think it allowed a little more counterplay from what I remember. I'm trying to think what I was expecting here. Yeah, I don't know, maybe just queen to, probably queen to a8, and then the issue here is that black is still winning, so this is still a pretty good position. I'm up by 2, I have the initiative. There just wasn't as much of a forced knockout here, I think, so if we go for this once again, here's this crosspin, king back, rook checks, something like this. He can block with the bishop here, bf1, and then if I give up the rook, I was looking at this line, this still looked like it would be winning ultimately. d3, force him to take that, and then come in this way, take the knight with check, and he's kind of short on squares here. So this is winning eventually probably too, but it's a little harder to convert this because just the queen having the open board, having checks, I thought this was less preferable. So ultimately that's why I didn't go for this rook c8. I went instead for rook c7. I went for bc7. He tries f4, which might be the only move here, and it might work if black doesn't see that there's en passant. After this, it's pretty much over. Takes, and then check, and then it's going to be mate in 1. So that's the end of the game. In terms of what I'm interested in looking at when I check it with the engine, let's see. What am I interested in figuring out here? Yeah, probably here instead of castling, I'm interested in seeing if knight e4 is better. I suspect it might be stronger to go knight e4. Oftentimes it is. If you see this, the knee-jerk reaction to bg5 is knight e4, and if he takes, you will soften up the d4 square because the knight will have to move. So that might have been the way to go there. Castling's probably fine, but oftentimes in the Dutch, if you castle and you let him take here, it ends up being like minus 0.5 or something. So white has a slight edge. So that's one thing to look at. That's one thing I'll be curious about. What else? Let's see. How I handled the opening, I think, was okay. It was a bit cramped. It wasn't the most ambitious, but I think these moves are at least okay. All this looks okay. Queen e7, I'll be interested to see if this is the most accurate here. It felt like a decent move. It also feels like it could be wasting time. It could be that there's something more to the point there, but I don't immediately see what it would be. Queen e7. Yeah, so that's one that I'd like to check on. I definitely want to check on this knight h5. Just intuitively, it doesn't quite feel right. It feels like there should be something else there. But once again, I don't understand this position well enough right here to suggest anything. You do want to go e5 at some point. That's the whole reason you go to e7, is to set this up. So, but it doesn't seem to work right away. If we go e5 right away, I don't think this is any good. I don't know, maybe this is something to do, is to try for this, but it doesn't feel right. But you certainly do get it just feels like until you get the bishop out, having the knight stuck here is not advantageous, but knight c5 is also coming here, so yeah, so maybe this is something to look at instead of knight to h5 here. Just intuitively, that didn't feel right. Yeah, maybe e5 or maybe something else there is the way to go. All right, knight b5 takes knight f6. Knight f6 is not, once again, it's not strictly necessary. But the alternative is what? We're going to go I get c6 and let him come here, move the rook. Yeah, maybe this, I don't know. He can actually, can he get out? No, because this is actually guarded. That's kind of nice. Yeah, so there's some other possibilities here. That's the thing about choosing this sort of Dutch setup, is there's a lot of versatile ways to handle it. You're not really forced to choose one plan, so instead of knight f6 here, and in the opening too, I'd kind of underestimated the opponent a bit, so possibly for some of these moves, I should have looked for something more accurate. Knight f6, c5, takes, I think takes there is right. Rook takes, knight d5, this move I'm almost sure is not the best move. This knight wants to come to e4 at the right moment. I think just, I suspect actually just c6 here and then going knight e4 is more accurate there. I strongly suspect that's what it'll say. Because yeah, he has to retreat. I don't know in hindsight why I didn't go for this. Let's see, knight c3, which also covers that square. I guess it's not totally easy to pick a move here. Maybe knight e4 is still good. Can we let him just take there, or is this a problem? Let's see. And then is there like e5 here? Oh no, it's pinned. Yeah, maybe this doesn't work actually, but definitely at least c6. I don't know if knight e4 works right away, but that's the thematic idea, is to go there at some point. Maybe we can even just take a turn to set up for it with something like rook b8 and sort of slowly roll out here, or even I don't know, even, oh, you know what? No, it's one of the issues was that he was always threatening to take here actually due to this pin. So I do have to be aware of that, which is another reason why I had picked knight d5, was actually so that the rook now sees this pawn, and it also cuts off his rook's line of sight to f5. So yeah, this phase of the game, everywhere from move kind of like 14, actually move 12 through move 16 or so, I'll be interested in seeing what the engine says about this phase. Anyway, knight d5, and then after he takes here, I felt pretty good about my position after this point. I feel like if he had any way to really put pressure on me, it was probably prior to this recapture here. It feels like black just gets a pretty easy game here. And here I do some maneuvering. g4, this might not have been necessary. I think in hindsight it doesn't feel correct to play it, because I don't really, but yeah, it was just a way of forcing him to pick a square for the knight if he's going to go to h4. But I think, as I was looking at yesterday, this move is incorrect because he can actually just go knight h4 anyway, and the pawn is protected tactically because b7 is still hanging here. So that was part of the issue. And then there were different ideas here, but g4 ultimately may be a waste of a move, and it sort of weakens my square control, because I'm not threatening to take here yet. So so yeah, so g4 may be a slight mistake as well, I suspect. What else? And then this plan of pushing on the queen side, I think, is what I do after this. Yeah, starting here. Here, it's like, how fast do you want to push the pawns? Should you kind of wait on it and set up for it more, or should you just go for it? At this point, I just wanted to force c5 through, so I noticed I had the opportunity to do so here. It feels like I'm still doing pretty well here. Here, it still feels like the game is roughly equal. I think after c5, if this is my plan on how to rip the game open up the center here, it still feels like this is about equal. Nothing has gotten out of hand yet, so rook takes c5. All this feels pretty natural. d4 was a move that I liked, but as I was looking at yesterday, yeah, it does feel like he should have taken it. And then what was I looking at here? I'd have to go back to my notes from yesterday, but yeah, I think trades, and then the idea was queen e2. I think this is what I was looking at. So this was another line here to check. Instead of maybe going e4, he might have wanted to go for that. Because after bishop b3, it doesn't feel like when you win the exchange here, it gives that big of an edge, but maybe it does. Maybe it does. Maybe things are kind of out of hand at this point. Because after, and then also right here, so instead of queen d2, I think knight d2 was the last try here. After this point, after he plays this plan of e2, it feels like this is winning for black past this point. And then here, the nice finish with the move bf4. All right, so let's see. How do I get the engine? Let's take a look. All right, let's flip through it. So Leningrad Dutch, yeah, so here instead of castling, it does say that knight e4 is slightly better for the reason specified. He has nothing to do but to actually give up the bishop pair right away with this, so that's a nice way to make an immediate gain and sort of, if not necessarily equalize, to generate some further imbalances here. Imbalances that white didn't need to make. e6 was good, okay, this is fine. h6 is always an option here. I prefer to get the knight out first. All this is good, queen e7 is fine. b6 is what it recommends. Sometimes I do see the engine want to go b6 and fianchetto here. I've never gone for this sort of plan, but I guess it makes sense that if you have all this square control on the light squares to bring the bishop this way somehow. It just doesn't feel natural for me. It's just not how I've ever played this line of the Dutch. So queen e7, queen b3, knight h. Yeah, I suspected that this was inaccurate. But once again, it says b6. So b6 also means that the pawn here is not on pre. Let's see where it wants you to bring this. Oh yeah, and then it helps up. It helps to set up c5, and then this is actually a nice structure here. There's actually some logic to this, especially if the knight wants to come here too. This makes a lot of sense. So interesting. Now that I see the engine recommend this, it's hard not to like it. Was e5 an option here? I suspect it's not. Yeah, it's not great. c5 hits with check. Yeah, so it's not anything spectacular. Knight h5 though is not too bad. This is good. This is the best move because it threatens the Zwischenzug. Here, yeah, here just c6. I had actually seen this when I was looking at it, was that I can just move this out of the way, and now his knight's kind of trapped. It actually gives a big edge here. Even though there's no way to win the knight outright, the knight is very poorly placed here, such that black has an edge right away. Interesting. Yeah, let's see. So finally we threaten to win it here, and here's where, yep. So This knight was what was guarding the rook. That was what was stopping him from having this idea of knight a6, but here it says to just go for it anyway. I guess because he's short on squares, he has to go back, and then we can immediately just gain tempo. Anytime you have this structure in the Dutch, it's actually pretty good. This is something that you often want to go for. So this looks pretty good, yeah. All right, knight f6 was what I went for instead. c5, so my opponent plays this pretty well. Taking was correct. Otherwise, he can resolve the tension on his terms. So here white has a little bit of an edge, but nothing tremendous yet. Yeah, so c6 also here. This is one thing that I suspected that knight d5 was one of my worst moves in this game. After I played it, I did feel like I was slightly worse here, but he doesn't capitalize on it the right way. a5 right away is what it recommends. I don't know, I guess. It's hard to see why a5 there, but all right, trades, yeah, and then takes. So the best move there was just to activate the rook, I guess. I thought that this would be a positional mistake for him. It's not too bad, it says, but I guess I overestimated this position. Okay, right here was where he had the potential to do a bit more. b4 right away to put more pressure. Maybe a4. Yeah. Just threaten to go b5 right away is his best plan. And look at all that power on the c file there. bf6. At some point he has to go for b5. You would think. Here it is. Okay. Let's see what happens here. Yeah, takes from the outside. Takes. And of course, black doesn't want to be the one to initiate the trade. He just has to kind of let it sit. So you try to make, I guess, gains on the other side of the board for now. But takes, and then maybe I guess pawn takes. All right. Yeah, and then I guess maybe after rook a5. Now we see why. In this position, we see why it's better for white. It does look like it, even though black has the bishop pair. It is starting to look like white's better here. He has easier squares for his pieces. He has more space. He has the safer king. So a lot of edges that negate the bishop pair here. So he missed this move queen c3, and that ends up being huge, I guess. Here's some maneuvering. G4 was not good. It says to go h5 first, which actually makes sense in hindsight. I end up having to go h5 anyway. Knight d2 is a miss. Okay, so yeah, so he actually did have this move here. And then taking here, as I predicted. This is playable, but the issue is the pawn is on pre. I had missed this g3 idea, though. This is interesting. Why g3 exactly? Why is this? What happens if he just takes it, for instance? We come this way? Okay. Huh. All right, and then is this some kind of tactic here? Yeah. Rook f1, I guess probably rook g8. Yeah, it's time to double up. Rook f3. So he is able to defend it, but yeah, now we have this tactical idea here. Wins back the pawn. Oh, hold up. Oh, okay. Go for the pin here instead. That makes sense. But what? Let's see why. Oh yeah, my move. He simply has an easy defense for it. He just blocks. So we have to pin and win this. Nice. Okay, so knight d2 was a slight mistake. He did have the option to go here because I can't just take back twice or I lose b7 there. Queen d7, so once again h5. So h5 is a move that I end up having to play anyway, and sort of all throughout this sequence, it recommends that I just get that out of the way. It's a little high level as to see why it's necessary, but it does make some sense. It likes this, yeah. And here, he can't really go about taking this. He can, but this kind of gives me what I want here. I was wondering what the evaluation would be after something like this. I was thinking if he has maybe knight to b3 here, but it says the best move is actually to go back, which makes sense. Trying to immediately contest the a file. So bd6 makes sense. Look at all that scope. Yeah, so something like this. Here comes knight to b3. We're setting up to swap this off. So go here first to keep this defended. And we have this. So he's able to kind of force me into a passive defense here, but it's actually black who has a slight edge here. So interesting line. And it actually was his best move. So taking there was better. Just trying to go for the tactics there. Okay, b5 was a miss, so I should have continued to, while my structure is pretty nice and I have a space advantage, I should continue to improve my pieces. This makes sense in hindsight. bd6 is nice. I didn't know that b5 would be such a bad move, huh? a5, yeah, a4 there. I looked at something like this, yeah, rook to b8. If b4, what was the issue here? I guess there isn't really an issue. It's just another option. a4, so all this. So c5 is actually not the right move. So it wants me in many of these junctions to go bd6 first to keep improving the position before opening up the game. But at this point, I was just antsy to open it up. So there it is, trade. So here, after we open things up, he is actually slightly better here. But he doesn't put his pieces on the optimum squares. Knight c3, this is one thing I had looked at yesterday. Yep. bf6. Queen b1, oh, is nice. I hadn't seen that move yesterday. And yeah, it does feel like white has a slight edge here, but nothing serious. d4 still hits at the right moment. Ooh, this is nice. So he puts the queen on b1, so he has this option to pocket the bishop on c2, and then there's a pin. So this is an interesting position, huh? This is a good one. It would have been very interesting to see the game go this way. Here comes that g3 idea again. Trying to come in this way. Probably, yeah, bishop takes. Interesting. All right, so that's a very interesting line. So if he had gone knight c3 here, this was one of the big misses for him, was not seeing this. Rook c2, well, not a big miss, but I think in hindsight, knight c3 is a serious way to try and take the edge for white. d4 is good, nice. I had that was one of the moves that I was the happiest with here in this game. And e4, as I had predicted, was a mistake. It's actually -2. I thought he should have taken this, which it says is best, yeah. It gives another move I hadn't looked at. It gives queen to e1. I hadn't looked at this at all. Interesting. Okay. So that's something as well. This is similar to the position that I had looked at earlier. Here he can't take this because of the threat on f2. Maybe even forcing mate on g1. So this is a slightly better version of the line that I had looked at. King G7 is brilliant, huh? Okay. Yeah, this gets deep. It's brilliant because it ignores a threat. Okay, well, I mean, he takes a pawn, I take a pawn. He gets this. It seems like, yeah, I can win the bishop, so I don't know if that's exactly a brilliant move, but yeah, so so either the move that I had looked at in my self-analysis, which was take, or there's this other option of going queen to e1, which I had not looked at all. So e4 is a blunder. He does hang the exchange, and it does end up being a big issue here. I had thought that in terms of practical chances, it might not be a huge issue for him to lose this exchange, but the evaluation says that it is. So here it doesn't care. So I thought we have to secure this pawn before we double up on the c file. Here it says we can just do it anyway. I had wondered about this. I didn't know if this was, I don't know if this is any good. Because we can take on b2. Okay. And now he still has issues with the back rank here, seemingly. Or something. I don't know. This is I guess his knight's just never going to get active, but it's tough to see exactly why this is so good as opposed to what I did. I like my move bf6. I'll have to look at this more later and see exactly why. This is unintuitive to block with queen e5 here. I wouldn't necessarily go for this line. Huh, there's a lot of tag here on the dark squares. What's this leading up to? We have to play something different here to avoid the draw. I don't know. Yeah, this is kind of weird. Okay, here comes bg5. Whoops. Go here. I just want to click ahead and see why this is so good. So we do win the pawn, and now I guess we're just at the exchange with a pretty dominant position. So I guess, yeah, he has to get out of the way. But yeah, okay, so that was another way to play it. I went bf6 here, bd3 I thought was a good try for him. h5, and then here, yes, this was where he had to try knight d2, as I had just looked at earlier. After queen d2, it feels like he's missing a lot of his final chances here. This was a miss. Okay, so I probably could have gone for the idea that I went for in the game here right away. Instead of, okay, that first and then setting this up. This is even better. I guess it's just more forcing, so. It's a similar idea to how things go, but it says that that's actually a miss. Anyway, we have that theme with rook c1 come up soon enough, and here it is. And now, yeah, this is my best move of the game probably, as we went through. And he doesn't really have any further chances here. He just has to play on until it's over. So he did have a way to avoid mate. Let's see what it was. Was this? What was the best option for him here? How do you avoid mate? It doesn't, oh, he has to give up the queen. Okay, gotcha, yep. And that's his only other option, so effectively it was over. So yeah, so interesting game. I think that was the most fun game from the round, and I will cover some more games soon.